All right, we welcome you to another episode of Learning Stories. This is a show where we interview a diverse set of learners from the 21st century. In each episode of this show, we interview a guest who has a story to share about how they acquired a set of skills and knowledge in a creative and unique manner. Why do we learn? What do we learn? And how we apply what we learn in the real world? These are questions I've always been curious about. And that's one of the reasons I started this show. In the process of interviewing our guest, we hope to uncover a new understanding of learning as conceptualized, narrated, and imagined by the guest in our show. And in this season of Learning Stories, we're focused on urban India. We're looking at stories of young Indians doing amazing things to define the future of our country. Today's guest, Salil Bajaj, he has over 3 years of experience in the entrepreneurial world. He previously built a hiring company that achieved a revenue of approximately 2 crores within a year and a half. He secured deals with notable brands such as Swiggy, Jupiter, Lenskart, and Giant Eagle. Currently, he's focused on becoming a creator. He runs a newsletter called Badam Lessons, and the focus of that newsletter is to really be a growth newsletter. But he's also building a newsletter company on the side. So, Salil, to start this interview, I'm just curious about your childhood. Tell me about Salil as a child. What were you curious about, and what were you hopeful about growing up in India?
Thanks, Abhishek. Thanks for introducing me. And yeah, coming to my childhood, right? So I was born in a small town in Punjab, Jalalabad. It's near Indo-Pakistan border, right? And most of the childhood has been away from my parents. I've lived in a boarding school for 12 years, and I went through a boarding school right after first class. That was in second standard. My parents put me in a boarding school. The core reason being they wanted me to gain like better education, right? That and my father was also curious about on if he whatever mistakes he made, he didn't want me to make similar mistakes, right? And he wanted other children also to go to the boarding school near about his relatives and all, but no one succeeded. I was the only one, right? And for me, the internal motivation was to just get away from mummy's dad, right? Because I was really I was kind of a student who really wanted to play around the whole day, not really study, right? So went to the boarding school. Most of the time, I think my life has largely been influenced by teachers, friends, folks around in the school, even like mess bhaiyas and all. We used to play cricket with them, right? So I've been born and brought up in that ecosystem where uh, I had like one particular schedule: wake up in the morning, 6 a.m., set your bed. By X amount of time, let's say 8, you need to get ready for the school. 9, there's assembly. 10 to 2, there's school timings. Then you've got hobbies. Then if you're a sports person, then you go for sports training, right? So everything end to end was really scheduled out. So most of the things that I've really learned has been very structured for me. So as a kid, turned out to be really structured by the time he passed out of 12th standard, right? He built a lot of camaraderie. He understood the value of discipline, the value of friendship, the value of living by your own self, right? Because we really had to survive by our own selves, even though we were around friends, but we used to send letters to our parents once a week, right? Once a month, sorry, right? And then later on, we used to do emails as well once a week and stuff, right? So we didn't really have other means of communication than being your friends around or teachers around, right? So those folks were your family. And as a kid, I was always, I wouldn't say I was a curious person of anything of that sort. I was kind of very disciplined. My parents told me to get marks, so I started studying to get marks, right? I was into sports. I was literally into a lot of sports. I started cricket when I was in second class. I had like many milestones that I achieved while playing sports, cricket, especially. I wanted to become a cricketer, but post sixth class, every parents asked, "Beta banna kya hai?" Right? And then I was like, cricketer banna is like, nahi itne paise nahi hai, bahut corruption hai and all that stuff. So the dreams changed eventually, right? So I've been a sports person throughout my life, very disciplined, very straightforward, and uh, kind of, let's say, if I end up meeting new people, I kind of explore. I want to learn from them what their journey is, right? And I believe I come across as a very open person when someone wants to reach out to me or wants to talk to me. I love sharing insights. I think probably there's a teacher inside me that really wants to educate the other person. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, sports is something I really connect with you on, Salil. And I remember reading one of your posts where you spoke about some of the lessons you learned from sports. Like,
Yeah.
if you had to tell me, like, for a young person growing up in India, what are some things you can learn from sports? Like, how can sports be applied in your life in other ways, according to you?
I think one thing, in a very deeper sense, sports will teach you a sense of freedom, right? I mean, the time, even right now, I go play tennis, right? I don't think about anything else besides just playing tennis. So being in the moment, thinking about that freedom, one would get a sense how freedom feels, right? There's no other stress than just focusing on probably hitting a shot or playing tennis or something of that sort. That's one. Second, I think it really builds that fitness and discipline in you. Because if you're into sports, obviously you need to kind of be fit as a person. You start thinking yourself in a certain way. You start connecting with how Kohli plays, right? Probably how Kohli is fit. So you want to be, as a sports person, you want to be fit like that, right? So there'll be a sense of there'll be a, I think in a deeper sense there'll be a value system creation happening underneath you, where you'll value fitness, you'll value health, right? That would happen. I think the third system would be the third lesson would be um, it's having a winning mindset, right? So most of the times either it's a zero sum game, right? Sports is a zero sum game. It's not a win-win game for everyone, right? But in that sense, you learn to compete with the other person. If you are playing in a team, you value your own role. You can't do everything, right? You can't be probably a batsman, bowler, and an all-rounder all at one. But even if you're all-rounder, you'll be known for one aspect more than the other, right? If you're playing hockey, you'll be a forward or a defender or something of that sort. So in one system, you'll understand where you are valued. So you learn more about yourself, right? You learn camaraderie. You learn what winning mentality is. You'll learn to appreciate what losing is, right? Because think about this: you're winning and then you end up losing. So you are deeper down. You kind of appreciate the other person, right? Man, you played well. That's why I kind of lost. Maybe that's totally fine if there are own mistakes, but in a very sportsmanship kind of sense, you'll kind of appreciate the other person out, right? So like these three lessons have been very core to me.
That's great, Salil, and I'm able to like relate to all of that. But at the end of like 10th grade or 11th grade, all students growing up in India have this big decision to make. What do I study at university? And I'm just curious about how your mind worked at that point of time because it's such a hard decision. Like in most schools, we have the option of choosing between commerce, science, and arts, and
Yeah.
very often our longer path in life is defined by that decision, which I find really difficult to process because you're so young and still acquiring and so many skills and so many ways of looking at the world. But what did you decide to study at university and what was that experience like for you? Was it different from boarding school? How is
Yeah.
it different? And yeah.
Um, so post 10th, right? Salil back then, so I was kind of doing everything. I had no clarity on what I really wanted out of life, right? I knew I was getting decent marks in 10th. I was playing sports, right? And the criteria falls under if you're good at studies, you would go take up science. My father really wanted me to take up commerce, maybe because he's from a business background. He kind of thought, you know what, long term commerce is going to help you out, right? But I wanted to be me, right? I want to be like, no, I'll take up science. I'll be that cool guy in the group, right? Even right now, most of the things I do, like probably a newsletter that I create or certain aspects, I want to come across as a smart person, right? So back then it was the same thing. If you're a science student, it means you're intelligent. You can probably crack some maths problems or do some organic chemistry that not maybe a commerce student would do, right? So everything was in theory. And once I finished off 12th, I kind of found out that I don't really want to become an engineer, right? I don't take up JEE, but I wanted to get into defense forces, but I couldn't clear the exam, right? And that largely came from the aspect because I kind of lived a very regimented life for 12 years. I think I thought, you know what, this is a similar life I want to have. And then there's some emotional aspect of uniform attached to it, right? Because we were also wearing uniforms, we represented our schools a certain way, right? Uh, be it India, be it outside, right? So there was this thing inside me of wearing that uniform, getting into the army, into the Air Force specifically, right, and serving the nation. So when I couldn't clear the exam, I was like, okay, what now? I don't want to do JW or something. I don't want to get into engineering. What should I do? So I kind of thought, okay, wait, I want to get into flying. That was in the Air Force. Probably I'll go to pilot. I'll become a pilot, right? Take a CPL or something. Kind of thought, okay, wait, well, that's too much money to pump in right after school. So I thought, okay, I'll take up aeronautical and I'll learn about flying. I'll learn about how machines are made and stuff of that sort, right? And underneath it, it was purely an emotional decision, not a rational decision at all. If today I were to look back, right, first of all, what I'll do is post 12th, I'll not go to college. I'll not even think about what course or something I want to do. I'll rather go ahead and explore what I really like, right? Create content, hang out with people, share my story, right? Do something that is not that helps me gain clarity, right? Just not do anything out of emotional aspects, right? So once I got into engineering, the experience was it was literally flip side. So there's this you're living in four walls. Your school is kind of at times named top 20, top 10 boarding schools of co-ed in India, right? You get opportunities that other students don't have. You feel like you're an elitist, right? uh, you feel like you've cracked everything, right? I was also what like the head boy of the school, right? So you feel like you've done like you stand somewhere in the society, right? But then you go to the college, this flip side experience where you're not roaming around with friends that you usually roam around with, right? You are not in an environment that you are born and brought up, right? For hostel system was the same, but the experience was completely different. uh, the rooms didn't have AC or fancy lightings, right? That I was used to, right? So the experience was totally different. Then I went to Chennai, right? Totally flip culture from Himachal to Chennai. It's like cold weather to literally a warm weather, right? Since I was used to moving around because I stayed in boarding, I was like, okay, Chennai is not a difficult thing for me. But in terms of education as an experience was something not I today if I someone tells me, I kind of say I could have saved those 50 lakhs money of my father, because at the end of the day I didn't really learn any skill set, right? I'm not saying it's any college degree fault or anything of that sort. It's one because uh, I was schooled in a way to get marks, right? I schooled myself that way. I thought, okay, getting marks would help me. Let's say I kind of got 8.2 or something CGPA. I used to go to the Harvard website and see, okay, do I clear the criteria or not, right? I had that josh of, probably then going studying into these big universities, right? So I used to think like that. And I used to kind of looked down upon who were doers, right? So there's one of my friends who kind of used to teach other students, right? And used to earn money out of it. So I never understood an aspect of problem solving at that point of time. He's literally creating value for himself. Solve a problem for someone, you earn money out of it, right? So I used to think, okay, man, he's not getting marks, he'll not go anywhere. So I had that kind of very schooled mindset, right? And by the end of the college, I had the similar kira in my head, want to become an officer. Then I moved from because I'd like learned, had like some of experience, moved from Air Force to becoming a UPSC, becoming an IS officer, right? Especially the IFS aspect really intrigued me, right? Want get into Indian Foreign Services, be a diplomat. It kind of came up from my growing up itself, right? Because we went to schools, we represented a certain way, lived a certain regimental life. It took part in ambulance, right? All of that sort. And being intellectual, being like smart kid in the room was something I've always wanted to be. So, and also slightly comes from the family background also, right? My parents wanted me to be like an officer, right? They used to pump in such views that you have a certain personality that resonates with them, right? Uh, and then even like my nanu, right? He used to kind of, because he's a good businessman, so he had like relations with such folks. So I had like kind of seen some aspects of life on how things were, because being from a small town, the dynamics are literally different compared to someone being from, let's say, Delhi, Bangalore, or something of that sort, right? So I was kind of more, I wouldn't say attached, but had a perspective on how ground life is in terms of Bharat, not India, right? So that also kind of influenced me in my college experience, and then went on to study UPSC. And so I started studying, I guess, in fourth year. I was like, okay, don't want to do anything else. I'll just go study. I came to Delhi, uh, got myself locked into a room for 2 years, studied really hard. Then I couldn't clear. Then I was like, man, I don't have a skill. I didn't clear the exam that I wanted to crack. Now what do I do in life, right? So I was just held up with whatever I was kind of being schooled, right, at that moment. Although my parents had given me all the liberty to do anything in life, right? They were like, you know what, we are not really educated, as educated as you are, right? You know 10 more things than we know. You know what's trending right now that we don't know, right? So they gave me that liberty to do experiment in life, kind of sort. But I think where I lacked was clarity, right? Focus on what I really wanted to do. So I was just roaming around everywhere. So once, I think somewhere in COVID second attempt UPSC, I kind of started, probably, I wouldn't say emotionally breaking down, but kind of, I was 25, right? Back 24, 25, I guess, right? 24, probably 25, something of that sort. And I was kind of like, okay, my friends are earning, the other folks are earning. I don't really have a skill set. If I fail again, I mean, where do I go, right? So I failed the second attempt, and really the realities came to the life, right? Okay, no skill set, what do I do? So then I kind of molded my thinking the way I wanted. So it's like I chucked how society thought, right? कि अच्छे number लाने हैं, job लेनी है. It's like, even if indirectly your parents say that you've been given liberty, this signaling something, right? Your relatives who are close to you are signaling something. So the society is kind of signaling something, right? So I thought, you know what, chuck the society. I need to get out of the system. Basically, just listen to what I want to do, right? If I go wrong, I'm the one to blame. If I do right, probably I do right, right? I don't have anyone else to appreciate, right? So 6 months down, I started to code, I started to write, I started to design and stuff. Then I applied for an internship to Parallel HQ, a design agency in Bangalore. They got back saying, okay, here's the assignment. Why don't you do that? So I think I started, and they wanted to get this done in probably 48 hours. I had no idea on how design, what product design is, right? So I did everything end to end, like use a, I googled everything. I did YouTube, I went to Skillshare, I went to Udemy. I'm like, करते हैं यार, कुछ तो उखाड़ लेंगे हम. And वहां से then I did user persona. I did, okay, how design is made. That was, out of that, I think I sat overnight till 5 a.m. just to complete that assignment, right? Objectively, I wanted to get an internship because I wanted to solve my money problem and work problem. But overall, I got an insight. Probably I like building, right? That's an insight I got. Then on the parallel, one of my friends from, I wouldn't say we were not in same college, but we worked in ISEC Chennai together for a bit of time. So he had called me up twice, thrice, just to see if I was exploring something else in life, right? He was building his own company, so that's how I got my first work, right? It's like Salil, and he kind of spoke to someone else whom I work closely with during ISEC days, right? And he gave a very positive review about me, and that's how I thought, okay, what, let's just get this guy on board. And that's when versatile happened. So I mean, we can continue that, but yeah, that's how the journey has been.
No, I mean, like one thing that stood out was your parents' unconditional support,
Yeah,
and I feel like it's hard to underestimate the long-term influence of that. Like your relatives and extended network can say anything, but if your parents back you and you're thinking up, that really builds your
yeah,
confidence, right? And I feel like, there's so much pressure for a young person in India to subscribe to these notions of what is a successful life. For a majority of us, it's like getting that job, whether it's in like engineering or like in the civil services. which is like sort of the mindset our parents were also brought up in, right? You have to be
Yeah,
stable and have a good job. But in a country like India with the economy booming so much, there are so many other opportunities. And just that piece about how you were flexible enough, because I think, like, hearing you, I don't think it must have been easy going through that UPSC preparation and not making it twice, right?
yeah,
Because you invested so much in that. And I know there's a lot of pressure to not only clear the exams, but that whole exam preparation cycle can really take a mental load on you, right?
yeah,
And you were so like invested in that dream. So I think one of the key lessons I'm picking up from your journey is that failure is like an opportunity to rethink and realign your sort of possibility and path in life, right? And I think even though you fail in one thing, you don't have to let it define your sort of future and your path. But now, like, you're in the professional world, right? You are out of college, you're done. So how did you acquire skills to do like this job in like an entire new setup, like in Bengaluru, right? I
yeah,
know you scaled that organization with your teammates to like 1.5 crore. So
yeah.
what did that organization do, and how did you acquire the skill set to build that to where it eventually went to in your journey?
Right. Yeah. So I think fundamentally, I was kind of solving my core problem of getting a job at that point of time, right? So once I got in touch with my ex-colleague, he was like, you know what, let's do it for 30 days and see if it works or not. And I think post 15 days, it was like, let's do it together. You're on board, right? Uh, there was nothing formal in nature at that point. There's nothing like I didn't even get like employment letter or anything of the sort because the relationship was such. It's just something that two folks are building something, right? And obviously there were other folks being coming together. They were doing jobs and stuff. But once I came to Bangalore, the one thing I knew was that we were zero money and had no clue what to do. Right? I had signed up for it, but I was like, okay, what do I do now? Right? So I got the responsibility of acquiring clients. We knew, okay, we want to build a service-based agency. There is a demand of design in the market, so we didn't really have to think a lot about it, right? So we were like, okay, let's just start off with by positioning as a design studio who would provide senior designers, right? And then there'll be one senior designer and two, three junior designers. This senior designer would lead the early stage companies, design teams and stuff. That was the basic idea that we had, right? And just given the responsibility of getting clients in, I was like, okay, again, let's go to YouTube, see how to get clients, right? That's the normal thing. Or you end up seeing other stories. So what really happened in that aspect was, so Vaibhav Sisanti's LinkedIn course, I took that, right? And I was like, okay, wait, this is something that can help me. So I experimented for a week, right? Sent a few DMs out. He told a couple of things, but I just jumped to the JTBD I wanted to do, right? Just get clients, right? My profile was not even built that well. So I just sent DMs to a few folks. I was like, okay, what? They're replying at this working, right? Then I told the co-founder back then, right, Darshan, who was very experienced in design, I mean, still experienced in design, right? It's like, you know what, let me use your account because you've already built your authority, right? You've got 10 years of experience, people who trust you, I've got barely anything. They're like, how can I solve design problems, right? So I took his LinkedIn account, um, started sending messages, right? So it's just started with execution. And then I thought, okay, wait, you know what? My message needs to be right. So I started writing more copies, right? I was working with Sago as the co-founder, right? I was closely working with him just to review my copies. Is the message tuned to the ICP that we are reaching out or not, right? So content rate, I got to really know how valuable content is, right? What you write, how you write, it's a communication. It's like how we are speaking on is a communication. Written format is a communication, right? So it's really valuable on how it's resonated with the other person. So he started reviewing. Then we started building growth strategies on, okay, what, let's say if we reach out 100 folks in a week, how many people do reply back? How many follow-ups do we have to do? What content people reply back on? Experimentation happened on that, right? Um, then we start looking at, okay, you know what? How does LinkedIn help further, right? If we go to someone's profile, they view us and we get to know, okay, well, this person is views. Let's send him a message, right? This is a founder. Okay. Then we start tracking out founders who write content on hiring and stuff. We send it out then. We send it out, sending out requests to them, right? So like this, we kept doubling down on the things that were working and chucking out things that were not working, right? And on the go, uh, I was learning from folks like again Weber's course. I was learning from Josh Braun. He was into sales. Started consuming his content. I even took up his course as well. I think I paid about 15K, something of that sort, right? It's really high in Indian INR, right? When you convert it out. But as like it's like an investment for me. I mean, I can pay lakhs for a college fee that got me nothing much 15K then, right? It's an investment for me, right? So I got 15K, took that course, uh, learned about how cold emailing copy is to be written. He built out everything on how he's done, right? Then we tried out cold emailing, cold emails, and that thing worked for us, right? We started getting a few clients from there, but LinkedIn was like a major thing, so we doubled down on that. We created a slight more bit system on how emails could work. So it's like if you send one connection request from here on LinkedIn, we could then have email sent on a cold email sent to the same person, right? So then we started thinking about systems and automation, right? We started capturing emails from Apollo. Then I got an intern under me. I started telling that person how to do. I start thinking on a slightly larger level on how I can go deeper into the system. So when it comes to creating skills, right, it started with one problem statement: how do we acquire clients, right? It just started with that question, and then came down on how a normal human behaves. Yeah, Google karte hai, right? Let's just find out how other people are doing, right? Then you get an insight on how others have cracked it. You start doing it by yourself. Then you gather your own personal insights, right? When I learned, okay, people, how LinkedIn helps you grow, right? I started doubling down on that. So I got insights on copy, is how important content copy is. I started getting insights on who would our ideal client be. In fact, I even got on calls with our potential clients who are our clients, just to gather feedback from them, right? What's your problem statement? What what's the biggest hiring problem that you have? Which level, which stage do you like guys hire? And we built solutions out of that. So it started with one question. We kept doubling, we kept doubling, we kept doubling. And if someone were to ask the same insights today, right, I would say start with customer, right? What's that person's problem? Build, get figure that out, solve that. If you can't do that, build a system that you can do. Right now what I'm doing is so something like newsletter, right? um, in hiring, what you can do is find the intent who is hiring. You can reach out to them. For newsletter, you need to gather the intent of the person, right? If Abhishek, let's say, is building on LinkedIn, not sure if he wants to build a newsletter, right? So, and let's say Abhishek is funded by YC, right? He's building a product. So I need to build a growth system for myself that I can sell to Abhishek, right? So it totally depends. Start with your customer first, understand what the problem is, understand how you can come in the place, and and just keep going deeper.
Yeah, actually, some great insights there, and like what I picked up, one thing I picked up was how advertising is changing so much in today's economy, right? Like
Yeah.
brands cannot just put up a print board and accept, consumers to come in. A lot of it is moving into this content creation sort of zone where brands have to provide some value to the consumer, and this doesn't have to be monetary value. It can be information or knowledge or
Yeah.
how the product can enhance your life from a value perspective. So I think that piece and that shift is really interesting, especially in the digital economy where you have so many brands and consumers that are primarily making a large amount of their transactions on the internet, right?
Yeah.
So if you were working with like a large brand,
Yeah.
like let's say like a large Indian brand like Swiggy, and you were
Yeah.
talking to their, like, how do you think their chief marketing officer is allocating budgets? Let's say they have 100% budget. How much of that is going to traditional media? How much of that is going to, like social media and new media, like based on your analysis of like branding
Mhm.
strategies that you've seen?
I guess, well, I'm not aware how these people think, but uh, I would say there's a certain mindset most of the CMOs or managers have, right? Because they've got so much experience. They start with the objective. They always start with the objective. What are we trying to achieve, right? And then they double down. They break it down into this. Let's say hypothetically, Swiggy wants to acquire 100 million customers, right? For example, their job, that's the job to be done. 100 million customers, that's the objective. The next question for any growth person or any CMO sitting at whatever level and whatever bigger budget would be, how can I do it in the fastest possible way, man? Right? They'll be like, okay, you know what? Let's partner up with some X company from where discovery would happen, right? Because fundamentally, you're kind of solving for two problems. One is a discovery problem, one is a monetization problem, right? So you start with discovery, you think, okay, partnerships can help, Insta, putting content out on Insta, YouTube can help, uh, um, uh, probably maybe VC funding could help discovery, right? These folks have a lot of huge networks, right? Um, then they would be like, okay, what, you know what, maybe collaborating with folks like Tanmay Bhatt who've already got distribution, right? Let's do with that. So for any CMO person with large budget, they ideally start with the objective at hand. How can I fastest possible way I can achieve that problem statement? And then they go about but then they go about that and they think, okay, if this can solve discovery for me, they'll be like, okay, how do I solve monetization for myself, right? So that's how they think.
Yeah, and like I think because that makes a lot of sense, because then the brands think like the way they're thinking is they have an objective and they work backwards from there, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like the creator economy is something that has really popped up in like these brands sort of horizon, right? Like for someone that doesn't know anything about the creator economy, why do you think young Indians or like people in the world in general should be interested in this opportunity? Maybe you can share
Yeah.
some statistics and tell me
Mhm.
what the creator economy is for someone that knows nothing about it.
See, oh, all right. I think this is something I'll give you a personal anecdote as well of my wife itself, right? So right now, she's working in Deloitte. She's got a pretty good job. She loves that, right? She's seeing me what I'm building and stuff. Uh, and we started off putting her content out on LinkedIn, right? And she saw some kind of growth. She's like, 700 to probably, I'm not sure, probably 14K followers at the moment. And it's been probably 2 months, right? Now she's building a newsletter as well, right? Although everything is free flowing at the moment, right? But fundamentally, every person who wants to become a creator or kind of think why become a creator is to think in a way of freedom, right? We were never meant to do probably a 9 to 5 job, right? We were meant to think creatively and provide value that we can create in exchange of doing earning something, right? Could be money, could be something or the other, right? So fundamentally humans were like that. Let's just take historically. I have milk, you've got bread, I will do the barter system, right? um, let's say then for example, I created machine, let's say a car. You want to reach some place at the fastest possible way, you can take that car and you pay money for that. So there's a creation that happened, right? There's a value chain that was formed, right? I mean, if you see fundamental economics, that's supply and demand, right? You create a demand for something, and there's a supply side of things. If they match, something happens, right? Similar happens in creator economy, right? If let's say we're talking about cars, for Ford built cars or any other company built cars, they kind of created something out that was valuable to humans. So right now, for any person, because you have something unique to share, right? You can become a creator easily, right? And anything that is shared needs to be obviously valuable to the other person as well, right? So if today, for example, if my wife is an auditor, could provide auditing value to a next person, right? And fundamentally achieve freedom, right? That's what we humans want. We want to wake up at any point of time, probably go do whatever we want our bank balance to be full, be with family, be happy, continue to provide value to the other person, right? Help out, right? That's the fundamental thing. So and most of the people want that. Uh, now, how that's the why part, right? How do you become one? And uh, to just share, let's say, to share the statistics, if it's a 250 million, sorry, $250 billion market, at the moment, probably 2023, something of that sort. You become 5 billion in 2024, that's literally double in barely 5 years, right? And when unique, let's say now, if big corporations were a big thing at one point of time, there'll be small uh, creators becoming big thing, right? Because now you want authenticity, right? Earlier, in let's say in marketing, we took Colgate because we were like, okay, what, that's something we want. Maybe we were being influenced by big brands, right? Right now, we are more emotionally being influenced by authenticity, right? Because probably in our mind that market is saturated for us. Colgate putting out an ad, or probably some car ad coming in the newspaper. We're like, yeah, done, theek hai, done. But let's say if someone that we resonate with is sitting in that car, maybe not as big as an actor or probably a sportsman, right? But could be in a similar position. Let's say Abhishek is sitting in a car and doing it. Then the two things happen. One, emotional resonance happens, right? You feel connected. Like, man, this guy is using it. I've been following this guy for a particular time of span of time. Probably he's doing the right thing, right? Secondly, then you start believing in yourself. You know what? If he can make it and get out that, probably whatever problem statement that you have now is 9 to 5 a problem statement for them, that could be one, right? And create a value system by your own self, then that why becomes even more important, right? So uh, just to like summarize this, why? Because fundamentally we humans are made to think creatively. We are made to live by freedom. We are made to emotionally connect. We're made to we kind of thrive in communities, right? There's no one big leader and we kind of end up following. We only follow when there's the community who follows the X person, right? So, and how creator economy is really helping this out, why this should again become is authenticity comes into place, emotional aspects into place, your freedom comes into place. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, that's amazing because I think the creator economy gives you an opportunity to access an audience at scale, right? And
Yeah,
this was not possible like 20 years ago, where your audience was limited to people you worked with, your school,
yeah,
or your immediate neighborhood. But
yeah,
right now, and I think I remember reading the post that you put up about your wife, and she's like a chartered accountant,
yeah,
and it was really fascinating to see how she built her brand around chartered accountancy. So you don't
yeah,
have to have like some really special skill to
yeah,
be like a creator in today's economy, right? You can
yeah,
pick your profession and actually build something around it. And
yeah,
like I know you are really bullish on newsletters and LinkedIn,
hmm,
or but newsletter focused like creator growth.
yeah,
Like based on your experience, and I
hmm,
read your piece about Mark Liu as well and his journey as a as a founder creator. So like,
yeah,
can you tell me some stories of founder creators that in addition to building their own companies, they were able to build a source of income by becoming a creator and sharing lessons they've learned
yeah,
as founder
hmm,
creators with a focus on newsletters as their mechanism to reach
yeah.
masses? So maybe tell me stories of like maybe two or three founders that you thought did a really like amazing job tapping into this creator economy
Yeah,
opportunity.
absolutely. Um, so fundamentally, I'll say something like this. One of the biggest leverages that you have in creator economy is distribution, right? And why newsletter play a big part is because you build an owned audience, right? You're not reliant on LinkedIn algorithms to get growth, not reliant on Insta to get growth, right? So you build an own audience. And lately, I'll give you recent examples because people can resonate with them better, right? I've seen, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, Jesse Puji, right? He is the founder of Gateway X, right? He's with his co-founders. They've got a newsletter called Bootstrap Giants, right? Now he's building his personal brand on LinkedIn, but he's similarly resonating, sharing his journey, insights for his core target audience on the newsletter itself, right? And I read it very thoroughly because I'm kind of learning something out of it. Same second person, John Rush, if I'm not wrong. He's built 20 plus product companies at the moment, and probably 5 to 6 have really blown up for him, right? Uh, and he's built in public itself. He puts content out daily. Whatever he puts on LinkedIn, he puts on newsletter itself, right? The fundamental remains the same. Building an on audience, getting feedback from them, right? and he's become big. Another creator would be Tom Elder, right? The person I was just researching on last week itself. This guy was an Atlassian, started writing online because he was into strategy and ops and thought, okay, you know what, probably something that I could help other folks with. Start with newsletter, right? And then because he was writing on LinkedIn for past 2 years, but saw newsletter his growth channel, right? Because of the audience he could capture and probably build his creator economies. Now he's building Strategy Hub. Those are the case studies he's compiling it together that would educate probably the founders, the product people that he has in his email community, right? Same is for J Claus, right? J Claus, I came to know about him a few months back. He runs Creator HQ, right? Um, Again, he's a newsletter first growth person. He educates people on how to become better creators, right? Does everything via newsletter. He sells courses via newsletter. He educates more people in newsletter, right? Fundamentally, newsletter helps you really focus on people who have very high intent, right? Who really love your content, right? Who really want to learn from you, right? And then the other person would be uh, there's one Chanel. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She's a founder of Growth in Reverse. Chanel or Chisel. I'm getting it wrong, but founder of Growth in Reverse. She's doing brilliant content. Again, growth stories, newsletter focused first, right? Um, s- Now I think she's going towards again selling her digital products, right? And even to name a few Indian ones, Niharika Kaur Sidhu, right? She built out everything. She's a bullish on those 4 hours work week concept, right? She sells digital products. A newsletter first growth person, right? So when I say newsletter first growth person, it means you fundamentally see newsletter as your main vertical, but you need to build around that as well. Because the main problem with newsletter growth is that you just can't grow. You need visibility from somewhere, right? So you need to post on LinkedIn, you need to be active on X, on Insta, on other stuff. But you keep newsletter as center attention, right? And then build from there. So again, Niharika is probably would be our age, right? Uh, Bullish on 4 hour work week. She sells digital courses, runs small community courses. She calls up, invites guests like Sahil Bloom and all on her community courses that she's running, right? Very small courses, right? All of that. Again, everyone driving everything from newsletter itself.
Yeah, and I think like that's where you come in as an organization, right? You started a
Yeah.
company where, so like if you had to like briefly summarize what service you offer at your new company and tell me how you solve that problem and who your target audience is, how would you maybe tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So fundamentally, I start, my core problem was I wanted to crack distribution, right? So a few months back, I was doing personal branding for myself. I'm still doing that. And as writing newsletters, started Badam lessons very seriously, started writing on X as well, right? And in fact, I started off with providing personal branding services to founders, right? Then found out certain problem statements, right? Kind of felt in love with newsletter, right? Then found out what's the benefit of a newsletter, right? So fundamentally, what Epithemia Labs does is it's a newsletter service at the moment, right? And a very bigger goal probably as I keep growing, I want to become a growth operator, right? Have like a content led engines where I can produce high quality videos for you as GrowthX does or every TV does, like good business case studies. But fundamentally, your newsletter stays at the center of attention and everything builds around that. So it's a content led growth engine that I want to build. And I kind of position it at the moment, position it as Creator Lab because one is I want to do a lot of experiments and provide growth services because let's say founder comes in, I want that person to be like, okay, you know what, I've done this many experiments. These work, these don't work, so just focus here and I'll help you grow, right? Second, I largely want other founders to start thinking like creators, right? Fundamentally, uh, what I found is when you start thinking like creators, you start thinking about, okay, you know what, how do I create value? How do I you kind of become, I would say, distribution first founder. You think you want to build an audience now. Then you think, okay, you want to convert that audience. You start thinking from your lens, right? When you think, usually how B2B works at the moment is you do cold email, cold reach outs. That absolutely works. I also do that, right, at the moment. But when you think like a creator, you think like, okay, you know what? You're the centerpiece of the story, and everything works around you. So your company doesn't become a centerpiece now. Your company is part of what you are building. A lot of solopreneurs are doing that, right? A lot of this indie market folks who are founders, they're solopreneurs again. They're doing that. So that's why I want to position this right now as a creator lab where I grow, where I do run a lot of experiments and growth tactics, that strategies that can really help the other person grow. Second is to help founders think like creators, where they are the centerpiece for me and I build everything around them, right? And thirdly, folks who are B2B focused, folks who are B2C focused, D2C focused, kind of, I'm going broad at the moment, but would narrow down as more core problems I keep learning on the go.
Yeah, and like for the listeners, like tuning in, I will be linking Badam Lessons, which is Salil's like amazing newsletter. I've learned a lot, and it's not just a newsletter, but I think he puts a lot of effort into his notes. And he was the one of the first newsletter writers to actually reach out to me with a personal message. Where
Yeah,
I remember you asking me like, what feedback do you have? Why did you?
yeah.
So no one I subscribed to ever did that. So I thought that really stood out for me, and I thought that was
Thank
really
you.
unique in terms of like reaching out to your reader. And I feel like that was something I would never, because like a brand has never spoken to me at a personal level, right?
Yeah,
So like that really made your newsletter stand out for me, right? And
thank you.
yeah, like
Yeah, I think in that sense, I'm sorry to cut you,
go ahead, go
but
ahead.
um, I think kind of comes from community first approach, right? Because let's say your 20K, 30K, or probably 1 lakh kind of subscribers you have, it's harder to really engage your community. But in early stages, it's just uh, really quick to gather your first 1,000 followers that you want, like true fans. That's there's a concept, but it's an effort to make those 1,000 true fans. Gather feedback. Well, newsletters, they're the kind of newsletters you can build. Who That's your passionate project. Just build out whatever you feel like, and readers will come to you. The other is you're thinking from readers' perspective, and you're really solving a problem for that. So I think that kind of feedback system then comes in.
Yeah, and like I know I was looking at the post you put up, I think like a couple of days or recently, where I was looking at your Substack reads. Now, Substack is a platform where you have all these newsletters hosted. It's an
Yeah.
American company. A lot of Indian creators use it, and what Substack does is if you turn on the monetization engine, I think they take about 10%, and you can get paid a certain amount for
Yeah.
writing a newsletter. So that's like one direct way you make money. But I know you read a lot of newsletters, and I
Yeah.
think you're probably someone that reads like more than anyone I know in my network. So if you could tell me like five newsletters you love reading and one
Yeah.
lesson you learned about, you know, life, business from each of these newsletters that you have
Right.
consumed.
All right. I'm really bad at names. But the first one that really comes to my mind is Demand Curve, right? It's a marketing newsletter that teaches you about marketing, right? One lesson would from that newsletter would be, if you want to understand how B2B marketing is done, that'll be great, right? Second would be, I think, Harry Dry's newsletter, right? It's just so good in terms of marketing. If you want to learn content, how to write good content, what's going on in the marketing world, how to really become a good writer, content marketing person, that's a go-to newsletter. That's like the recommendation I'll have, right? Um, Third would be, I think, there's one I'm following, which is I think there's this company called Noticed, right? Because I sense I'm kind of doing similar to what those guys are doing. It's a purely B2B company. Those founders share information on how they're helping other B2B companies grow via personal branding and newsletters, right? So basically, their tagline is "Your story is more than your valuation," something like that, right? So I read their newsletters to get daily updates on how they're, because they share a lot of good insights on how to go grow B2B companies, right? So if anyone wants to learn how to grow their B2B company. So I think this would notice they could just to probably go on LinkedIn, put notice there, and they'll find that person out. Um, Another would be, so lately this is one newsletter I started reading, is the Big Desk. It's, I guess it's by a founder of Beehive, right? But he shares insights on his entrepreneurial experience, right? He shares those startup insights and stuff, right? So, for example, lately I'd read about it's something on culture he talked about, right? How if you're a small company, how culture is. If you're a big company, how culture really defines everything up, right? So if anyone who's curious about basically wants to solve who wants to learn from a really good entrepreneur, I think the Big Desk is something I would recommend them, right? And I think the fifth one I would rather say is I'm following a lot of small newsletters as well, right? So, and which are directly kind of folks who are directly linked to what I'm doing, because I learned a lot of their experience. They're like 5 years ahead of me, right? But they're not as big shot as the other people. So I would so mostly I found them from Twitter. I think Shubham is one person. Then there is Maximilian. There's that person, right? They talk about, they basically write about content on how they're helping their clients grow. So for me, it's like a learning aspect. So anyone who's similar field as me, right? Building newsletter or content or helping B2B founders out, it's, those could be newsletter. I'll give you those links that will help others out.
For sure, and I
Yeah.
will be linking, whatever links that Salil shares
Mm.
with me in the show notes as well. It's hard to like document so many ideas and insights in like a 1 hour conversation. But for the listeners tuning in, I think the best way to take this conversation forward would be to reach out to Salil personally
Yeah.
and understand what they do as an organization. I think he's doing some great work in, this newsletter growth, personal branding space. But for the last I mean, if someone wanted to reach out to you and engage with your services, Salil,
Yeah.
what are some ways they can reach out to you and build a connection with you?
I guess I'm really active on LinkedIn and X, right? But do send me a note, because without a note on LinkedIn, I don't really get to know why you want to reach out to me, right? And because I kind of connect with very specific people on LinkedIn, because I think of it as an acquisition channel. So please do add a note. On X, same as well. Do add a note. Just don't send me a follow request. I mean, follow me, but please send me a note if you want to really ask anything from me. And you can also reach out to, I mean, I'll give my email ID as well. More than happy to share that, and they can reach out to me there as well. But LinkedIn and X is something I'll really prefer. I'm really fast there.
Wonderful. So, for the listeners tuning in, this was a great episode where we learned so much about personal growth, newsletters, and I think Salil's journey of bootstrapping a startup here in India, right, and building that from the ground up. And he's someone like listening to you, Salil. I realized that even if you don't have the skills, you can use the internet to acquire any kind of knowledge you want to acquire. But I think you need to have a quick feedback cycle where you're not only learning new information but applying it and then gathering new information. And I think in building your company, you have demonstrated a lot of those skills of being a really good open source learner. That's what I think, you really embody in a lot of ways. So thank you for that, Salila, and thank you for your time. And
Thanks, Abhishek. Thanks for having me. Thank you so much.
And yeah, for the listeners tuning in, do stay tuned for more such episodes of amazing young Indians, changing the future of our country in their own context. I will be linking Salil's social profiles in the show notes. And this is the teacher tuber and Abhishek Shetty signing off on this episode of Learning Stories.